to cordless power tools, everybody's got their opinion. Everybody's got different types of tools that they like or don't like. For me, I make my living with tools. I do, you know, we do everything from logging to construction to all of our own mechanic work. We rebuild rental houses. We do a little bit of everything. I wanted a tool that was tough, that was dependable, that would last. So for me, it was kind of a no-brainer. I went around and I talked to contractors, and the contractors that I did a lot of work with, and this was the tool of choice for guys that were doing work day in and day out. Now, there is a few higher end tools than Milwaukee, you know, you get your Festool and stuff like that, but when it comes to impacts and drills, I don't think anybody beats Milwaukee. Now, Festool has, you know, their Domino machine and some of their specialty tools that are absolutely out of this world, great tools. But for everyday use, this is kind of the top of the line, in my personal opinion. Now, if you're just doing a little bit here or there, there's some other great choices out there that are substantially less inexpensive than this. You know, your Rigid, your Skill, your DeWalt. DeWalt's kind of that one that's in the middle between homeowner and contractor, though they've came up a lot in the last few years. They're really moving up. But you know, your Ryobis, which used to be total junk, they're a decent tool now. So for hit and miss use, all of those are great tools if you're not using them, dependent on them every day. The other beauty of Milwaukee is their lineup of tools, which is a really cool feature when you think about the most expensive part of this is these batteries. Once you start buying tools and you have batteries, you almost kind of have to stick with that brand of tool, because you know, having 10 or 15 different types of batteries, that's way expensive. So the cool thing with Milwaukee is it doesn't matter whether you're mechanicking, contracting, plumbing, whatever you're doing, woodworking, Milwaukee has a tool specifically for what you're doing. And we'll get into that in a minute and some of the other tools I've bought that go along with this lineup of tools. But this is probably the most to use tools in any cordless power tool lineup is your drill and your impact. These are the toughest impacts that you will ever find. Now, they have some newer ones that are even more powerful than this, but this tool's 15, 17 years old. I don't know. I mean, it's been dropped off of two-story houses. It's been smashed. It's been thrown around. It's been painted, as you can see, and it's still hit hard all day, every day. And it's funny because I work with guys every now and then that'll show up with their Ryobis or their Cobalts, and they're looking at my old wore-out Milwaukees. But at the end of the day, these still perform, and they outperform a lot of those new lower end tools. And like I say, those are great tools if that's all you're doing is using them now and then. But if you're planning on going into business, or you're planning on using these day in and day out, I highly recommend the Milwaukee line. They are top-notch tools. So let's move over here and I'll show you some of the other tools and why I went that direction. My other lineup of tools, from lights to miter saw, which when we were building our house, we lost our house in the fire in 2017 and rebuilt from the ground up. So some of this stuff I bought during that process, not having power, you know, with the miter saw, the lights. I will say, in saying that there is other manufacturers that build better certain tools. When it comes to the drill and the impact, nobody competes with Milwaukee, in my personal opinion. But like these, I don't know who builds those for Milwaukee, but they're, needless to say, they're not great. This has been a great tool. These lights are lifesavers if you're working in an area where you need light, you don't have power. Great hunting light. Sander, this is another tool that I rarely use. I use the corded sanders in my wood shop. Not happy with the sander at all. Haven't been since it was new, but I had batteries. I ended up going and getting one. Never use it. Mistake. Jigsaw has been a phenomenal tool. This isn't a cordless, but great tool nonetheless. This is one of those tools that I probably wouldn't have bought again. I use it rarely in my wood shop. I have some Porter cable, pneumatic finish nailers. I use those all the time. I rarely use this. I would never buy it again. It was one of those moments where you just spend money and you shouldn't have. This little one-handed Sawzall is an animal. For its size, this thing does phenomenal. You can get in spots that you can't get in with the big, you know, corded, heavy-duty ones. I mean, it doesn't have the power that has, but for 90% of what I do, it's light, it's agile, you can get into spots. It does a great job. After the drill and the impact, this is the next tool that I would suggest anybody that's doing any kind of remodel work or woodworking, this little thing right here is phenomenal. So many different attachments you can get for it. It does a great job. It's light, great. So I'll talk about, actually, you know what? We'll talk about that last. I use this blower all the time. Great power. I don't know, I've seen some of the Makita and some of the other brands I think are probably a little more powerful, but there again, I have Milwaukee batteries, so that's the tool I went with. This is another one I would never buy again. It's too slow, takes too long to rebuild. Like, I don't know, it's just hammer stapler or a hand stapler I think is a way better option, but it's all right. It's nice for in real tight, hard to get spots. I use it rarely. Going into the mechanic side of stuff, this is another spot where Milwaukee shines. So in my shop, I've got a Snap-on 1/2-inch impact driver. I don't know if it'll outperform the Snap-on, but it'll run right alongside it, and I think maybe outperform it a little bit. And you know, it's substantially less money. This is Milwaukee's definitely taking over the mechanic power tool industry. Ratchet driver, these things are phenomenal. I use these all the time. I usually carry one in my pickup for whatever. They're just super handy. This is the one thing that I will say, that blower, you better have some big batteries because they go through batteries really, really quick. Another cool thing I would say about Milwaukee too is their battery life is outstanding. Like, you know, that impact that I have, the impact and drill set, I think they come with the 2 amp hour batteries. When I bought them 15, 16 years ago, I'm still using those batteries. Now a 2 amp ain't gonna work on any of this stuff, but on an impact driver, it does great. It does the job it's supposed to do. It will run for, you know, hour and a half driving screws. I got some, they're not out here, but I have some small flashlights, not super bright, but I keep one in my truck with one of those 2 amp batteries on it, and that thing, it'll last 6-8 hours on a 2 amp battery, just on. This is a lifesaver. When you're running machinery, this is an absolute lifesaver. Now, before we moved, I had a lot more machinery, was doing a lot more construction than I am now. This was an absolute must-have. I've got the skid steer now and a couple of trailers in the sawmill. I could probably get by with a regular pump grease gun now and would be just fine, but since I have this, I'm sure happy that I do. It is an absolute lifesaver when you're greasing a lot of equipment. So let's go back over here to the skill saw. So, you know, growing up in the industry and around the people that I did, you know, contractors used rear handle, left hand blade on the left side skill saws, and that's what everybody used. You can see your blade. Everybody where I grew up called these East Coast saws, I don't know why. And they work okay if you're up on a raft or something and you're reaching out, but you can't see, if you're right-handed anyway, you can't see where your blade's cutting. And I wanted a cordless rear handle skill saw. At the time, Milwaukee didn't make one. So I did a thing and I went and bought a Makita. This is a great saw. I have no qualms about this saw other than the fact that 2 months after I bought this saw, Milwaukee had a rear handle skill saw on the shelf. Had I known at the time, I would have just waited and not had to buy more batteries, but all in all, it's been a great saw. I've got 4 batteries now. If I ever find a tool that I like in Makita better than Milwaukee, I can buy a Makita, which is what I did here. I like the little handheld Makita router better than the Milwaukee. It just feels a little better in my hand. So I had the choice between the two. I went with the Makita because I already had batteries. Not something I would recommend, but it just happened that way. Now I've got Makita and Milwaukee. I can kind of pick between the two, see which tool I like the best. But so all in all, in short, I would say if you're doing a lot of stuff like I do day in and day out, Milwaukee is probably what I would recommend to you. Followed closely, I would say, now by Makita or DeWalt. You know, Makita's got some great contractor tools. I think DeWalt might beat them out in a few spots. If you're doing stuff here and there, you know, and you want just a good, reliable impact or drill, Rigid makes a great one. Ryobi, the new Ryobi stuff is way better than it used to be. You know, what's the other one? Cobalt, Bosch. There's a lot of them out there that are building a decent tool now. They don't have the lineup. I don't think they're quite the quality that Milwaukee is, especially with the drill and the driver. But if you're not using them every day, you're never going to notice the difference. So I mean, there's a lot of great options out there. I would say whatever's fits your budget the best, go with that. But at the end of the day, if you're doing a lot of stuff, Milwaukee has the best lineup, the best batteries, and they're just overall great tools. I don't know what else to say about them other than I use some of this stuff every single day.